All right, y'all. Robert Sykes, KetoSavage.com, and today we're doing a podcast / video. So if you're listening to this, it's going to be live on YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, it can also be listened to on iTunes and all your preferred podcast platforms. I got the one and only Brandon Clark in the building. This is the second podcast or third?
Third. I actually think fourth.
Really? Fourth
so.
podcast?
I think so.
Well, you got to be close to the mic, man.
Oh.
You can move that, too.
I still don't got it. I'm still not.
We're doing a new setup with this. So this podcast is like tenfold purpose here. We're trying to figure out a new podcasting setup. I'm trying to get me reacclimated to doing interviews because it's been a while since I've done some. And Brandon's got all kinds of interesting things to talk about. So it'll be good. But for anybody that doesn't know Brandon, he is the Keto Brick manager here. You've been with us now. You hit your year mark a couple weeks ago, right?
Yeah. Over 1 year for sure. I think by maybe a month.
Maybe a month?
Yeah.
A month or a year and a month, man.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a holiday celebration.
Yeah, that is true.
Celebration. Well, cheers.
Yeah,
Cheers on the Starbucks coffee to that.
Definitely.
So we talked in depth last time you were on. I don't know if we've done 3 or 4 podcasts. I don't even remember. They're all running together. But we talked about your resistance band training quite a bit. We talked about your motivation for getting into, fitness and whatnot quite a bit. I don't want to dive too much into resistance band and body weight, but at the same time, I want to touch on it a little bit because I feel like with everybody being quarantined right now, it's super relevant.
Oh, yeah.
So that hadn't really phased you, the whole coronavirus, because you've been just doing your normal training.
Yeah, not at all. Just, continuing right on as usual.
So you're doing jump rope, resistance bands, and body weight calisthenics, and that's it?
So I had been doing more jump rope until I had a calf injury, and so I stopped the jump rope and I really dove in and ramped up the calisthenics, and so I started doing that as the vast majority, and now currently I'm pretty much just doing all superset high volume calisthenics, at least 5 days a week, if not more.
5 days a week, if not more. I had my shoulder injury way back in the day, and it's just recently started flaring up on me, so I've been doing a lot more bands. And I like it a lot, man. I used to just use the bands when I'm traveling, but now I've been doing the bands for like almost all of my shoulder movements.
Yeah.
And I think I probably prefer it more than the free weights, honestly, especially for shoulders,
Yeah, and have you had problems with your shoulders before?
I had that initial injury like years ago with my right shoulder. I think I was doing incline dumbbell press, and I threw something out, and then I haven't done, and then I had any issues with it for quite some time, and then I started getting a flare up with this last prep, and I think it's just because my calories were real low, and I don't know, I tweaked something, but I started doing the resistance bands in its place, and those don't mess it up at all.
No, I think what I found is it not only effectively works the muscle and you get everything that you're desiring from the workout aspect, but then there's also like this therapy aspect since it targets the stabilizer muscles so well.
Yeah, I'm going to start doing that. I'm probably just going to start doing resistance bands for all of my shoulder stuff at least once a week, like for my hypertrophy days, just do resistance bands.
Yeah. And
I feel like, honestly, so many people have been doing resistance bands with this lockdown that I think they may be kind of a new staple for people.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I've actually been watching a lot of people's posts and stories, and everyone's talking about the essentially all the things that we talk about as being the positives of resistance band training, of getting such a high-quality contraction, having that constant time under tension that is just very unique to resistance band training. I mean, even like I have this love for calisthenics, which is kind of why I always go back to it, but it still doesn't give the same contraction that resistance band does at that peak point.
I've been doing a lot of I don't know what the official, it's some type of variation of a tricep extension, but I've been doing like a really high point, I'll mount the bands really high above my head, and then I'll lean down, and I'll basically just do an extension. Yeah. But I get more range of motion with that using the bands than anything else, really. And I get a super good pump. Like, I'll do the light band on that. Not the light band. I'll do, like, the medium band. And I'll do 4 sets, getting more reps each time. And by the time I'm doing my 4th set, I'm like 20 reps. I'm like totally gassed. Can't do anything else.
Yeah, and the really unique thing about it is it just really perfectly matches your natural body mechanics with the movement, because you know how everybody's different. So, you know, people can do certain movements differently in order to feel the exercise the most for them as an individual. And the bands just acclimate to your natural body mechanics. And if you have limitations or certain things that restrict your freedom of movement or whatever, the bands are really, you know, individual specific to your individual needs. And it really enables you to still maximize the effectiveness despite the differences or limitations.
Yeah, I like them a lot. Let's talk about your little cut right now. You're doing, is it like an official cut or is it kind of like an unofficial cut?
I would say it's an unofficial. I'm just taking everything I know and taking everything that I would say, trying to leverage all the weapons I have at my disposal to try and lean out as effortlessly as possible.
So you did the NACA competition. That was your first ever bodybuilding show.
Yes.
I know we did a podcast, I think, right after you did that.
Right before and right after.
Yeah, that's right. Right before and right after. And we had done it soon enough after that I don't feel like you had really even started your reverse diet. You weren't that deep into your reverse diet when we recorded right after. So talk to me a little bit about your reverse diet first, because that was in October, right? October of last year. So it's been quite a few months now since the show. You got super lean, and then you did a reverse diet. Talk to me about that first, because I can relate there, because I'm in the middle of my reverse diet now. So talk to me about how your reverse diet experience went, and then talk about what you're doing now with your cup.
So I guess I didn't really take seriously, or didn't really know what to fully expect coming out after the show. And if I were to do it again, I would do it totally differently. Much more controlled, much more strategic.
So you went off the rails on your reverse.
I did, but I would. It's where you're at mentally afterwards. It's a very hard place to be in, and that's where I didn't really think about it until I was there, which was a mistake. I feel like now, if I were going to, if I were to get a client tomorrow and they were saying, I want to do this competition, I would be telling them to have the mindset at the beginning, at the onset, that show day is not the end.
Yeah.
And that it's going to need to go beyond that. And if they're going to get that lean, what's necessary to step on stage and be competitive and try and win, then they're going to need to be just as controlled and strategic coming out of it.
Yeah.
And I tried to formulate in my mind this way that I could have all this freedom, kind of have my cake and eat it too type mentality, to where it's like, well, if I just stay keto friendly, then I'm gonna be fine. But when you go to that level of depletion and restriction, your capability for what you can intake is like nothing I've ever experienced before.
Yeah, it's next level.
Yeah, and then if you even accept the majority of these keto products that are out there that are low quality keto treats, you can consume those with the same negative aspect as carbohydrates. You can just eat them and eat them and eat them, and they're not nutrient dense. They're just, the magical net carb calculations, and you fix in your mind that you're okay to have them, but then you're in this compromised mentality if you're not going into it, with a strategic approach, and it's just a recipe for bad things to happen. So I noticed that I put on weight after the show really quickly, not as quickly as if I had gone full-blown like carbs afterwards, because I didn't, but definitely put on weight faster than I would have liked. And I went right back to training and everything, but
what'd you get down to?
Got down to 159.
Yeah, 159. Then what'd you get up to, and in what time frame?
I got up, I would say over the course of over the course of several months, I got up to 190.
So you put on 30 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and I did notice a difference, though. I did notice that, and my family, even whether they were trying to make me feel better or not, but they told me, and I believed I could notice that I had more quality muscle.
Yeah.
Like I was in a state where I was putting on some body fat, but I was also putting on quality muscle. Like my physique, my body composition changed.
Mm-hmm.
And I could tell I was in this prime condition for growth.
Yeah.
And I just did what most people do and take it too far. And I didn't want to do that. Like I wanted to stay lean, but I obviously had recognized that you can't stay stage ready year round.
Yeah.
But I don't know. This has all been a really big learning process. So while that was like a difficult thing to go through, I believe it's going to be really useful for me going forward personally in being able to do what I want to do, which is live lean and fit, year round, and be able to advise my clients and warn them ahead of time and guide them, through these different stages and these different challenges, because I have personally experienced both the positives and the negatives, and so I feel like it'll make me a better coach in those circumstances.
It's funny because, like, it's obviously not optimal to put on that much weight, especially that quickly post-show. Like, you have this weird relationship with food. Like, it's not the epitome of what health is or represents, but I kind of like the fact that you had to go through that and experience it. I like the fact that I went through it and I experienced it during my first show, because it gives you so much perspective that you wouldn't normally have the opportunity to have. And I mean, as a coach, it allows you to relate so much more with any clients you're working with, whether they've done a show or not, just simply ones that have, this kind of rocky relationship with food. When you do a prep and you get that lean and then you, like, come out of it and you have a, pretty rough reverse diet, it's like you gain so much perspective and you can appreciate and understand what your clients are going through, what other competitors are going through, and people that just have been up and down and yo-yoed their whole life have gone through, and you approach how you manipulate their macronutrients and how you talk with them in a much more experienced manner, I feel.
Yeah, and I like now when I have clients and they want to try something, or they're asking for my advice on something, I now because of all these personal experiences, I can tell them, okay, if you do this, because everybody wants to ask you about cheat meals or drinking or any of that. And I've had clients that have experienced the alcohol. I personally haven't experienced the alcohol effects because I don't drink. But
it's a wise move.
Yeah, it's worked out well for me. But I'm able to advise them on what the likely outcome is going to be, and I give them a worst case scenario. And then I tell them that now, if you're going to do it, I advise against it. First of all, this is what I advise you to do instead. But if you're going to do it, this is what you need to prepare for mentally ahead of time, and this is the strategy you need to go at it with. Because if you don't go into situations with a strategy, with a mentality to not only do something, but then how to come out of it, the potential to go off the rails and destroy your progress is so much more likely.
Yeah, totally. I've leaned down and gone through a prep several times now, and this is the end, like, upon recording this is the end of the 8th week of my reverse diet, and I feel like I've finally nailed down the right way to do a reverse diet. Yeah. I've had some pretty crazy calorie days. Like, I had 8,000 calories the other day.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, pretty obscene amount of food.
That's crazy.
But it's been done with a strategic, method.
Yeah.
And I woke up today at 173, and on show day I was 166. And this is 2 months post-show.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I've definitely, I'm holding more water. I've definitely fluffed out a little bit. But I've achieved what I consider to be a healthy, sustainable, weight and composition, and I've done so gradually, and it's not been incredibly taxing on my mind or my body. And I feel like that should be the goal of any reverse diet. And I don't know, like I'm okay. Like, you have to embrace the fact that you're not going to be 5% body fat year round.
Yeah.
Especially if you want to make substantial muscular improvements in like a building phase.
Yeah.
I think you can easily, as a male, sit around between 8 and 12, even 14% on the upper end of that, and that be a totally sustainable, healthy composition.
Yeah.
I'd be curious. We ought to do like a pinch caliper test on you
Yeah,
today and see kind of what you're at right now.
Yeah.
Because you've leaned down a lot over the past few, like what now, a couple months?
Yeah, I'm probably at
About a
about
month and a half?
the month and a half mark. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've lost from my highest down to my lowest. It's been about 15 pounds. So I'm 175 today when I weighed today.
So we're almost at meeting in the middle, man.
Yeah.
Almost 175 across the board.
But like, what's funny is like I'm, because of what I had gone through before, the extent that I was able to take my physique through deeper state keto, my experiences coming out of it, not being what I wanted, but it was because of my own fault. But then learning through that process, I came back to, and there's the hormone things that are going on and everything, and this I'd never really experienced before the ability to eat food like that and not feel full, and then all of a sudden just feel sick. And so, but it brings you to this point to where you have to wrap your mind around the situation and then strategize going forward. And so I wanted to start using all the different things that I had learned and using as much as I could to my advantage to start to lean down again, to get to what I believe my ideal maintenance weight is, which is what I am right now, 175. It only took 6 weeks to do it, and it wasn't hard.
Yeah.
It wasn't hard at all. Like, I'm not suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And in DSK, if you're going to end up standing on stage, there's going to be a degree you got to be willing to suffer.
Totally.
At the end.
Totally.
If you're going to be competitive, because everybody's taking it, to the extreme.
It's not natural to get that low. Like, you have to do unnatural things, not like unnatural, injections or anything.
Right.
Unnatural
Abnormal
training and caloric intake, for sure.
Yeah. And but then I was like, I want to lean down. I want to get to what I consider now to be my ideal maintenance weight, where I want to be lean and fit year round. And I was like, but I don't want to do anything so extreme, because I believe every time before that I've done something, it's always been to a crazy extreme. Now, DSK doesn't have to be extreme. It's depending on what your personal individual goals are. If you want to step on stage, it's going to have to get extreme at a certain point. But I think there is something so wrong with the fitness industry and what's advised when it comes to diets, that it's always got to be a mindset of extremes and work out as much as you can handle and diet down as fast as possible and be as extreme. And what people need to realize is the harder and faster and more extreme you go, first off, you're gonna sacrifice a lot of muscle.
Yeah.
But there's gonna be a rebound effect from that. And so, taking that into consideration, I was like, I want to do something that is much easier on my body, doesn't stress my body so much. And I believe with what I learned through DSK, with my experience going through the protocol for 20 weeks and then coming out of it, it's like, I believe if I come at it with a lot of those weapons, those same weapons, but utilize it from a getting to my ideal lean and fit body that I want, that it's not going to have to be extreme, and that's going to better enable me to make it a lifestyle to where I can sustain it year round.
Having like this sustainable lifestyle approach to your nutrition and your training is what gets me excited about the ketogenic diet, about natural bodybuilding. Like, that to me is what all those things are supposed to encompass. And I like the extremes because I am a bodybuilder. Like, that is an extreme, sport, but I look forward to and embrace and enjoy like the off season, where there's not a show looming. I can just focus on improving day to day, but not at the expense of my other day-to-day activities. Like, I'm at a point now where I'm eating enough food, my hormones are starting to stabilize, I feel really good, like I'm sleeping better, like everything's better, and I'm able to tackle my workouts with excitement and energy, and they're fun again.
Yeah.
I'm able to like tackle my business endeavors without having to be just totally drained and depleted. And I'm not quite stabilized with the nutrition. I'm still kind of scaling up my macros. I haven't finished out the reverse diet yet, but I'm getting to a point where I don't obsess over food at all, which is a huge plus for sure. And to me, that should be the end goal for everybody. Like, not necessarily maintain, because I feel like maintenance is just this. I mean, there's no such thing as maintenance. You're either getting better or you're getting worse. But finding a sustainable way to continually move the needle forward, but not at the expense of your normal day-to-day activities, I think is key. And if you pair proper training with enough calories that you're able to grow, but not just get, fat and obese.
Yeah.
And you're able to get proper quality nutrients from like a ketogenic diet that's well formulated. I mean, it's fountain of youth right there. You're going to get better and better.
Yeah. Yeah, and what's funny is I used to think like I would never be able to say no to things, like I would never, which is one of the original draws to the ketogenic diet that I had was I was like, all the dairy you can have, and I love dairy. I love the cheeses. I love the heavy creams.
You
the
drinking
sour
black
cream.
coffee? Is there heavy cream in there?
Black coffee. I'm not having hardly. Not having hardly. That's pretty poor English.
Not having hardly. Ain't no.
But it's funny. Like now I have the choice, and I know I have. It's funny. I experienced getting so strict with DSK that my body I was able to see how my body reacted to these individual foods, which I've talked about before.
Yeah.
And it's like now, after reintroducing different foods like dairy, and even like a lot of veggies, I shy away from that now. Like I'm choosing not to have dairy, choosing not to add cheese, choosing not to have a certain volume of the cruciferous veggies that you can have on keto. Because I know how I feel without them, and it's better.
Yeah.
And I am in a state of having complete control over myself that it's like you can start to make these really intelligent choices about what you put in your body because of what you've been through. And it's really exciting to see things working so well and feeling like you're in complete control, and then yet you're also reaping these rewards from what you're seeing in your physique.
Yeah. I feel like I agree 100%. Like I do not eat that many veggies now for that very reason. Like I don't feel any benefit to them. I just feel more bloated. Every once in a while I'll crave a salad, so I'll eat a salad, but I'm not drawn to it. Now, a little bit of heavy cream in my coffee is one thing that I definitely think is not optimal. Like I feel that I have more adverse effects than positive effects that come from dairy. But it's like I like that little bit of heavy cream. When I'm transitioning into a building phase or an off season, it's kind of like a glass of wine on occasion. Like I can justify it, like that. I'm okay with sacrificing a little bit just to enjoy that one little addition to my coffee every once in a while.
Yeah, I feel like that for me is
sugar-free Jell-O.
There's some sugar-free Jell-O for sure, and that is not. I would not sit there and tell everybody they should be down in sugar-free Jell-O, but every once in a while, that hits the spot. Every once in a while, a little whipped cream on something, and all those things, they're not good nutritionally, but when 98% of what you're taking in is nutrient-dense, high-quality foods. And I would just absolutely say your heavy cream is a lot better than Jell-O and whipped cream or anything like that. I would say for me that might be like I still do like to have also like Parmesan cheese.
Yeah.
And so I'll add that to something, even though it is a dairy. I feel like it is. My body responds much better to it than other forms of cheese and stuff like that. So sometimes I will go a little heavy on the Parmesan cheese, but it is that if you're not competing, or you're not pushing yourself to get to a certain goal in a certain amount of time, then you can enjoy those things, and your body, it's not that big of a deal that your body doesn't respond 100% optimally.
Right.
And almost in some circumstances, your body kind of relaxes a little bit. Like constantly hitting your body with so much stress, like with people that are coming at it with a caloric deficit on top of fasting, on top of extreme weightlifting, on top of extreme cardio. Like you can't just go extreme without a bad rebound, in my experience.
Totally.
And which is why I really, advise people now, especially if they're really doing a lot of heavy, intense resistance training, like maybe do more of the low intensity, steady state cardio, instead of doing a really crazy intense 2-hour weightlifting session and then going and doing 30 minutes a hit and then fasting 22 hours and then being in a, strict, severe caloric deficit. Like you've got to have a strategy to it. You can't just, redline it.
Yeah.
Your body's gonna show you the negative effects of that eventually.
100%, man. There's been so many cases of competitors that would plateau on their weight, and they're just doing all that they could. They had their calories down low, the cardio was up, their training was up, and they would just be totally plateaued a week out from the show. And then they would just get burnt out and say, screw it, I'm not going to go to the gym for a couple of days, I'm not going to do any cardio, I'm not going to do anything, I'm just going to sleep. And then they would do that, and then their weight would drop 5, 6, 7 pounds because their body's cortisol leveled out and they just de-stressed.
Yep.
And their body was able to actually make improvement. So not constantly redlining things is very important.
Well, what's funny is I kind of experienced that even though this hasn't been nearly as strict or anything as my deeper state keto protocol that I used for the competition. I experienced that to some extent.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Here lately?
Yeah, I did. So I had discussed with you how I'd put myself in, what I would consider to be a pretty, a moderate caloric deficit.
Enough, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I was doing 2,000 calories, which in my mind, thinking about how low I got to compete. And then I started eating at about 2,000 and having my fat at about 80%. I was feeling great. And I've been doing what I would consider mild intermittent fasting of 14 to 16 hours a day. Mm-hmm. But if I was really hungry, I'd cut it at 14 hours and have my half a brick and black coffee for lunch. But what I've really noticed that a major indicator for me is when I lose my motivation to work out, is when I'm pushing, when I'm reaching that depleted state. My body is hurting. Mm-hmm. And I started feeling that motivation. I felt it go. And I went about 7 to 10 days where it went from me being hyped up and looking forward to killing it during my workout to mentally having to overcome the fact that I needed to get my workout done for that day before I came to work. And so I was talking with you and everything about my caloric levels, and I really I ended up thinking that I needed to increase it. I needed to increase my calories, that maybe my body was showing me the signs that it had kind of peaked and it needed to relax a little bit. And so I started increasing my calories. So I increased it by 500 to 700 calories a day. I initially went up to 22, 2300, and then I bumped it up a little bit more, and I've been sitting at right around 2600.
Really? I didn't know you bumped up that much.
And over the course, it's just been the last 5 days, because my body also stopped responding, which was a sign to me as well. When I stopped seeing the results in the scale, I stopped seeing the results in my mirror checks, and I started feeling those effects in my workout with a loss of motivation. So it was kind of all the way around. And when I made those changes, the scale started to reflect again, which was crazy, because I'm I've gone up in calories, and it's it allowed my body to relax, and then I dipped right back down. And now I'm consuming yesterday I consumed 2,700 calories, and I'm still sitting at 175. right now.
Yeah, see, that to me makes total sense.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so many people in the keto space that would argue that calories don't count and that all of that is just unicorns and rainbows. I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
but your body, like, you have to have a certain amount of fuel to be optimal. I mean, that's just basic biology right there. And if you go too low for too long, you're going to see some adverse effects. If you go too high for too long, you're going to see some adverse effects. Depending on what your goals are, you need to manipulate that caloric intake. Like, that is so blatantly obvious to me, but some people just don't get it. I don't know.
Well, I feel like, too, it's like you almost have to go through an experience, even though you hear it.
Yeah.
It's like you got to go through an experience. And what's awesome is in the last 5 days of doing this, I've gotten my motivation back, and like I'm storming into my garage to go do all my calisthenics, and I'm all hyped up.
That's how you should feel, especially when you're in a surplus. You should be excited about your workout. If you're not, then something's wrong.
Oh yeah, and it's like before, when I was feeling the effects, I was just glad when it was done, and now I'm upset that I've run out of time because I wanted to keep going. And what I think is like key, what I wish more people would like wrap their mind around, is instead of this, I've got to get to this idea as fast as humanly possible, no matter what the cost. Because they're not prepared mentally for what it would take to do that, and they're not going to do it as effectively if they do it with that mindset.
Right.
But more of having their health as a priority and a change of lifestyle, and not trying to rush it, but going at it with strategy and a lifestyle approach, instead of I got to get shredded before I go to the beach in a month.
Yeah.
Because it's just going to do more damage than good.
It's definitely going to do more damage than good. I had somebody reach out the other day, and they were asking if I could help them get lean very quickly, and they were going to not do keto after they got lean. They just wanted to do keto for a short term to get lean. And then, like, the next sentence was asking about if they could do cheat meals. And I just, like, people's total thought process with being healthy is so screwed up. Like, I don't know. I'm going to totally revamp my coaching philosophy where, like, if the cheat meal is in your vocabulary, you're going to want a different coach because you're not going to want to work with me.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny because people are coming into it from that, I feel like that 1990s Bill Phillips EAS mentality of the cheat meal was critical every week to the whole diet working. Yeah. And, what you end up learning when you go through, what I ended up learning going through Deeper State, and what I do now is like the refeed, what you would refer to as a refeed.
Feels like strategic.
It's strategic, but it scratches that itch.
Yeah.
But you don't suffer the consequences. Like, you may put on a pound or two that's gone in 24 to 48 hours at most, and that's probably mostly due to the sodium that you take in. But like saying, okay, I'm not going to worry about hitting this caloric amount, and the foods that you're going to take in are going to be delicious keto foods, but that are still strict, like a ribeye. Your body just responds great, but then you come out of it without, you're not left wanting. You're so grateful in the end that you chose to do that rather than a cheat meal, because I actually, during this last process, I timed out the negative effects of a legit cheat meal. So my results could have been even better because I did 2 legit carb cheat meals in the process, and I paid for it for a full week. I didn't get back to where I was before the cheat meal until a full 7 days later.
Yeah, that's crazy, man.
I know, one meal. One meal, and it wasn't worth it. I wasn't feeling well afterwards. I didn't feel as dialed in mentally afterwards. It took me a couple days to get back in. But when I go out and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna let myself eat, but it's gonna be like a ribeye or something to that, or even like a Five Guys, burger or something, which obviously isn't ideal.
But it's a lot better than actual carb cheat.
Oh, and my body handled it.
Yeah.
Very, very well.
Totally.
And so I feel like now I can go into it, and whereas I used to be like, I deserve a cheat meal, It's more like, I don't want one.
Yeah.
I don't want to sacrifice all the progress I've gained, and I can scratch that itch with totally acceptable keto foods.
Yeah, it's hard to feel guilty eating a delicious, big, meaty, fatty ribeye.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you eat that and you just feel good about your life. We're gonna have ribeyes tonight, by the way.
Oh, that's awesome.
I've got some gonna go on the Traeger here soon.
Excellent,
I've got one
excellent.
more addition too. After this podcast, we'll have the ribeyes, and then I'm thawing out and marinating one of the mule deer heart from my last year's harvest. So we'll eat the heart from the mule deer I killed.
Awesome.
So,
I'm looking forward to
Yeah,
it.
I don't know how it's
Yeah.
gonna taste. We'll see. I've never
Hey.
cooked it this way before, so it'll be a mystery meat, but it should be good.
Yeah, I'm interested.
So talk to me about your current strategy, man. Like, what are you doing with your nutrition now? Now that you're eating more calories as well, but like, what are you doing to make up your routine to find this kind of like sustainable approach to training? Well, I guess we kind of talk about training, but mostly nutrition. So you're doing what with regard to that? Black coffee, do kind of intermittent fasting?
Yeah, but I didn't want to do, because I've done the OMAD approach. I've done the, a lot of 18 to 20 plus hours of fasting where I only allowed myself, 0-calorie beverages or black coffee during my fasting window. And what I started to notice was the harder and longer I went with the fasting, the harder time I had with controlling the food intake when I broke my fast and went into my eating window.
You start thinking about it as you get closer and closer, and then when it's time to eat, it's like the gloves are off and you just go off the deep end.
Yeah, and even if it was like if you have a caloric and macros that you want to hit, I found that I was much less likely to have a strategic approach and hit those. It's almost like the strategy would go out the window, and I would just be ravenous by the time I'd go for the food. So I thought, through the process, and I was like, I wonder if how it would be if I just took a mild fasting approach. At least, I heard Joe Rogan say that he will do like 14 hours. So I was like, 14 hours. I've heard people take it as low as 12 hours and say you still experience some benefits. But I set mine and I was like, 14 hours for me. If I stop eating at 10 o'clock at night, have my last food intake, and then I don't eat again until at least noon the next day, I've hit the 14-hour mark. If I can keep it in that 14 to 16-hour window, but then kind of I set like a threshold on the other side too, because I'll get really amped up and motivated and be like, I'm going to go all day. So it's like I needed to set a boundary for myself to not carry it too long, because I know what was going to happen.
And a lower threshold.
But then I still wanted to kind of experience the benefits of the feeling of being light on your stomach and having a lot of energy when you're not weighed down with a lot of food. And I have really found that for me, having half of a keto brick with black coffee as my lunch when I break my fast is like perfect. It's like a solid fat source, but it's only 500 calories, but it's in the perfect, keto macros, and it allows me to get through that hump until dinner. And then when dinner comes, I'm ready for it, but I'm not ravenous.
Right.
I'm not at that point to where I feel like I'm kind of risking going off the rails a little bit. And everybody needs to realize they have that potential. Everybody has this potential. No, not everybody is in control all the time. Like you've got to learn yourself and study yourself and your strengths and your weaknesses, and then a strategy to combat those weaknesses. So that's kind of how I went at it. And then I went at my nutrition strategy for dinner with just mainly focusing on meat and eggs, essentially. Throw some cruciferous veggies in there if it happens, to work its way in there. But the main basis is meat.
What kind of meat?
Usually like 80-20 ground beef. And a lot of times that is just because of the cost, being married, having 5 kids, being a single income provider, and my oldest boy is 13 now, and that boy can down some food.
Yeah.
So the grocery bill gets a little high. So and that's why a lot of times I stick with 80-20 ground beef and eggs and bacon, and essentially, then the kids can dive into all that as much as they want to, and it doesn't, hit the bank account as hard.
Mm-hmm.
And you're able to buy in bulk as well, and then you can meal prep it. Like meal prep for me has always been an issue as a constantly working on the go, working overtime, working extra jobs, all these things to where meal prep has always been difficult and tracking has always been difficult. So I went into this thinking, how do I make the meal prep as easy as possible and the tracking as easy as possible? Because when I realized with my weakness, if I wanted to succeed in my goals, if you're going to have the most success, you're going to have to meal prep to some extent, and you're going to have to track to some. It's just a necessary evil. You're going to have to do it. So, like to any busy parents, busy professionals out there, you still got to find a way to do it to make it work for you. So I've really seen, how valuable of a product the Keto Brick is, and to where you made it as a performance product for competing, I leverage it as a weapon in my, like how I word it is, I leverage it as a weapon in my mission to be lean and fit year round by using it as the easiest way to meal prep and the easiest way to track my calories, to where I literally can track my calories without using MyFitnessPal or whatever tracking app there is, because I know approximately, I know that there's 1,000 calories in a brick and what that breaks down to, approximately 90 grams of fat, 30 grams of protein, 12 to 16 total carbs depending on the flavor. And those will vary a little bit depending on the flavor, but just at a glance,
Right.
instinctively what it is. And then when you're mainly eating meats, you get to a point where you don't even need to weigh it out. Like I know, 13 ounces of 80-20 ground beef is between 900 and 1,000 calories. So when you make it that easy, it makes the tracking not hard at all, as easy as it could possibly be, and it makes meal prep as easy as it could possibly be. Like I just yesterday cooked up about 5 pounds of 80-20 ground beef and got it in the fridge ready for this week.
Yeah.
That's not most people's idea of meal prep, but that's what makes it work for me as someone who is constantly on the go, has crazy busy family life and a lot of work to do and is always on the go. That's what makes it work for me, and that's how you can use those types of strategies to make it to where it's not such an effort. Like I've heard of people meal prepping all afternoon on a Sunday. That's never going to be a reality for me, but I know I can use the Keto Brick, which is no effort at all, and that automatically takes 1,000 calories of my daily nutrition out of the question. I know the quality of the ingredients. I know it has perfect keto macros. I know it's completely shelf stable. I cut it in half and have half for lunch and half before bed and fill in the rest with meat. And it's like magic, it just works perfectly.
It's funny because, I'm obviously going to sound biased being the owner of the company. You're going to sound biased being the manager of the company. But it's like we practice what we preach, period. Like, we're not trying to make sales by saying that. It's like this was made. It's kind of like reverse engineered. Like, I made the brick to scratch my own itch, fill the need that I had, and not make a product to make money. So I don't have a problem saying that it's really good at what it's designed to do, which for me was initially for performance. But hearing you talk about it just as a way to make it more sustainable, like, that's awesome too. And I mean, I literally eat one every single day. I had one every single day of my contest prep. I've had one every single day of my reverse diet, and I look forward to it every single day. It does take the guesswork out of it. It allows me to eat leaner cuts of meat if I want, and then be able to balance out my macro ratios. Eggs are super convenient because it's like roughly, 5 and 5 grams of fat, 5 grams of protein, sometimes 6, depending on the brand of the egg you get, or the size of the egg you get. But it's like finding things that make manipulating your goals, manipulating your macros to hit those goals easier is key, because so many people's excuse to why they fall off of a diet or a lifestyle or nutritional protocol is because it's too much and they get overwhelmed. Like, this is literally foolproof if you just get the basics underway, you know. And I don't eat a lot of vegetables, but when I did eat a lot of vegetables, I used to get frustrated because you have to like eat it just in time or else it goes bad and spoils, gets all soggy. With meat, it's like you get it, you freeze it, or you eat it, and the brick shelf stable, so you don't have near as much food waste. Like, I can't tell you the last time I threw away food. I hate throwing away food, so I don't. I just eat what I thaw what I need, I eat what I need, and then I hit my goals, period. Like, it's really that simple.
Yeah. And it's so mmany people too, like, they have this big complex plan, but my whole thing, and I tell this to my clients, is you've got to make it as simple as possible. The basics work. It's when you start complaining about, well, yeah, like, you can't have it all. Like, everybody wants to complain about food variety, and then they want cheat meals, and then they want all these things. But when you're trying to progress towards a goal as fast as possible, something's got to give.
Yeah.
And what you need to realize is, with the ketogenic diet, I mean, you have nothing to complain about when you can have a ribeye and you can have the Keto Brick. Like, it's the best of all worlds. But you just need to realize that you're not going to have the success when you're trying to have all of these variables added in. You need to make it as simple as possible for yourself to follow and stick with. And that's why there's all of these things that people always talk about, going back to the basics, whether it's nutritionally, whether it's with training. And it's because that works, and making things simple increases that percentage of success that you're likely to have, because it will be easier to stay consistent and to hit your targets. Yeah,
there's so much to be said for willpower as well, because willpower, like, you have a finite amount of willpower in a day, and if you're constantly trying to add all these new variables, you're going to be tested as to what is the right amount of X, Y, or Z. You know, what should I increase more of or decrease? Like, willpower is finite, so if you can just remove all the unnecessary variables, go back to the basics, have a properly laid foundation, then that's that much more willpower you'll have left at the end of the day to adhere to the basics. You know, and then you're going to reach that goal. Like, if you already reached your goal, like, if you're at where you want to be, then yeah, feel free to add in some more variables, see what your body can tolerate, see what your mind can tolerate. But if you have a specific goal that you're getting to, I'm constantly preaching remove as much unnecessary weight as you possibly can, because it's not contributing to the betterment of what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. It's you need to, like, decrease that margin for error, and understand and be willing to accept your own weaknesses. Like, for me, like, one way that the Keto Brick, like, I literally view it as a weapon to combat my love of nut butters.
Yeah.
You know, because nut butters, I can get out of control.
Oh, I can seriously put down some nut butter.
Yeah. But you know, when, like, the other night, I literally was like, it hit my mind. I knew that jar of peanut butter was in the fridge, and I wasn't even hungry. I just was, like, in that snack state.
Yeah.
And I knew it was there. And I had hit my calories for the day, of what I wanted to hit. I knew I wasn't hungry, but it was like one of those times where I felt weak. So I went to the pantry and I grabbed a peanut butter brick, and I had a couple bites of the peanut butter brick, and it completely satisfied that itch, and that craving completely went away without me, like, going off the rails and downing a bunch of peanut butter and then regretting it later.
Yeah.
You know, I had this high quality product that filled me up to where peanut butter doesn't fill me up. And, you know, because of all of the high quality ingredients in the brick, how nutrient dense it is, it completely just wiped it out as an issue at all.
Speaking of ingredients, I want to tease something real quick. This podcast is going live on Friday, I forget what day that winds up being. But you and I and the rest of the Keto Brick team have been working on, we're just going to add a little Keto Brick filler here because we've been talking about it so much.
Why not?
It's relevant. But we got a new flavor coming up. The new flavor is going to launch on the 7th of June, which is a Sunday. I'm not going to tell what the flavor is on this podcast. They'll find out this weekend. We'll make an announcement.
Okay.
But let's talk a little bit about the ingredients, because I feel like, first of all, the ingredients that we use in all the current bricks are freaking top flight. Like, I'll stand behind them 110%. There's a reason we use every single ingredient. There's some uncertainty with some that other people have, but then we explain why we use those, and it's apparent, it's obvious, and it makes sense.
Right.
A lot of people, especially in the keto carnivore space, have always knocked the fact that we use a vegetable-based protein powder. There's a reason we use vegetable-based protein powder. I'm not going to dive too deep into that. Very high-level, synopsis is simply that most of the whey protein powders are just not as easily absorbed. So we use that vegetable-based protein because it has a better absorption rate, and that's just the simple fact of the matter. I don't have any GI distress from that. Most people don't. I don't think anybody does, really. I've never had one complaint from the Keto Brick from a GI distress standpoint because of the protein powder we're using currently. However, people have been knocking on our doors, not literally but figuratively, since we started the company, for us to use an animal-based protein powder. So, this Sunday, the 7th of June, we're going to launch a Keto Brick flavor that uses a grass-fed whey concentrate, super high-level, top-level protein powder, not vegetable-based, and the flavor is going to knock your socks off.
Oh, yeah. Like, trying to be careful here, but this brick is like, it's totally different than the other flavors, but in a totally good way. Like, the texture and the taste and is just totally unique compared to the other ones. In my opinion, I have no doubt that it is going to rank at the top with the others that are at the top right now, which the peanut butter and toasted almond coconut are really the crowd favorites right now. This one I have no question is going to move right up and it's going to be in the top 3.
See, it's funny because I thought toasted almond coconut could potentially dethrone peanut butter. Peanut butter's still beating toasted almond coconut. I feel like it's a pretty close neck and neck competition, but I feel like peanut butter's still the crowd champ, the reigning champ. And if you're a nut butter person, you may still like peanut butter. I mean, peanut butter's hard to beat if you're a nut butter person. It's just it's always going to be a favorite. But if you're one that really wants an animal-based protein powder and you like this flavor, which I'm sure you will, then this may just topple peanut butter.
I was going to say most of you probably had a certain kind of candy as a child, probably at the movie theater, and this just makes you think of that. I mean,
Yep.
I mean, to the point that we literally were sitting around tasting it, and that's you threw it out there, and immediately everybody in the room was like, "That's it.
Yep.
That's the name."
That's the name. And you'll know that name this weekend when we announce that name. But the launch for that is going to be the 7th of June. That Sunday. We're probably going to do the same time, 12 noon Central. So get ready. This podcast is not designed to be a huge hype up for that by any means, but I feel like it's a relevant thing to mention because you and I both eat the bricks as much as we do.
Oh yeah. And I would like to hit one thing real quick.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
So just because I get a lot of comments on my Instagram and in reference to my posts, and I think everybody saw you through your prep, using the bricks as a performance product. But one thing that I just really wanted to highlight, and I touched on it a little bit earlier, but the reason I made the ketogenic diet a lifestyle for me, the reason I get up at 4:30 every morning and knock out my workout first thing in the morning because I know otherwise I'm not going to get it in. The reason I do all of this stuff nutritionally and with my exercise and everything is to where, like, Robert right now does everything to be the best ketogenic bodybuilder he can be. I use it right now at the stage of my life that I'm in to be the best husband and father that I can be. And I know that the the ketogenic diet has changed my life to allow me to be a better husband and father. I know that working out every day and maintaining my health and fitness, like I joke around and like to call it like I'm a dadlete. Like I need to be able to be in good enough shape to where when I come home from working all day, I still got energy to play around with the kids, to wrestle with the kids, to help Jackie around the house, to be energetic and engaged in conversation, to not have my mind clouded due to poor nutrition. I need to be dialed in so that I can engage with them emotionally and relationally, which is also the reason why I do my workouts the way I do. The reason I focus on calisthenics and bands is because, I've done really heavy squats and really heavy deadlifts in the past, and they are effective and they build incredible physiques. But they also, certain workouts take a lot longer and break down the body to a certain extent that causes a certain level of soreness. And as a dad, I don't need another reason to not want to get up off the couch because my legs are, totally destroyed from a crazy squat session. But I have found that calisthenics and the band training, it all works together with my goals for my entire life, with what I'm trying to achieve. And what's most important in my life right now is Jackie and those 5 kids. And if anything that I'm doing contradicts my goals there, then it needs to be adjusted or it needs to go. And that is where keto, calisthenics, resistance band training, and the brick, those are all weapons I am leveraging on my mission to be the best husband and father that I can be. And I just want to lay that out there. Like, you need to have that as an individual. You need to know why you're doing what you're doing. And if you know why, those hard days when you don't want to do it, you're going to know why you need to do it and push through.
It's freaking deep, man. It's very freaking deep. It's funny because I talk about ketogenic diet and bodybuilding and everything on my own platforms, and I have this underlying deeper meaning for why I do everything I do. And like someone that doesn't know me, doesn't know my backstory, doesn't know you or your story, they hear us talking about this stuff and they just think it's like a mask or a facade or something. Like you can't make it deeper than it is. But I feel like you and I both are very like sentimental people in the sense that we recognize that we only have one life to live. We recognize the time with our loved ones is finite. We recognize that we will die. Mm-hmm. You were in the police force for 16 years. You've seen death firsthand. Mm-hmm. And when you know that and you become incredibly protective of how you spend your time and how you spend your resources, like it brings a lot of pride to me and a lot of satisfaction to my life to know that you value the brick, our company. We're willing to move from Virginia with your family to come down here and work with us in the first place. Like, you speak very highly of everything that I've built, and I have a lot of respect for you, man. Like, I've gotten to know you a lot over the past year and a half, or year and a month, and there's a lot of other things that are in the works right now that nobody else knows. I haven't announced it yet, but you have seen a glimpse of what's to come. And I just want everybody that's listening to this or watching this to know that we got a freaking awesome team here. Brandon's a rock star. His family is like, I literally do not know 5 kids that are more well behaved than your 5 kids. And you've done a pretty unorthodox or like unconventional way of raising them. Like, they're all homeschool.
Yep.
But like they're like the most well-mannered, educated kids I've ever met. Like, I look forward to being around them every time we have a cookout or something. So just know that I respect the hell out of you, man. I'm excited to have you by my side as we build this company.
Absolutely.
And for anybody watching this or listening, definitely give Brandon a follow. But know that the people that are here building this are here building this for a deeper meaning than just to make a buck. Like, we want to make an impact. We want to leave a legacy. And we value every single one of y'all more than you could possibly realize. And we just appreciate y'all, you know?
And this isn't cocky, but it may sound cocky, but the Keto Brick is the best keto product on the market, hands down, no competition, dollar for dollar, calorie for calorie. No matter which way you want to look at it, it's the best. And I see what goes directly in those bricks every single day, and I have so much confidence in that product. I want at least 1,000 calories of that product in my body every day.
Well, you said it, not me, but I'll back it up 100%. I love it. Well, listen, man, I got a client call. What can people go to find out more about you?
So I'm probably most active on my Instagram. It's at brandon.t.clark, brandon.t.clark.
Awesome.
And then they can end up getting to my Facebook from there if they want to. And then I'm also a coach for Deeper State Keto, so you can follow them on Instagram as well. And we put content out there all the time as well.
Shoot, yeah, man. Well, I'll obviously link out. The more people that know you, the better. Heck yeah, man. Always a pleasure talking. Well, I can't believe this is 4 podcasts in, but
I know. I love it.
Yeah, we'll make it a 5th podcast when we're able to kind of unveil some of the stuff we're working on. I feel like that'll be an exciting announcement for sure.
That would be awesome.
So,
that would be awesome. Anytime I can be back, I will be in this chair.
We'll do it. Appreciate you, man.
Thank
and until next time, you'll have a good one.